You're thinking about making a move to the Carolinas and you just don't know what to expect? My name is Brandy Reinschmidt. I'm a local realtor here in Charlotte, North Carolina, and today we're going to cover a list of things that people find surprising when they start to purchase a home here in North Carolina. If this is your first time on our channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button and tap that notification bell so you can be the first to be notified when we post new videos every week. My team and I get calls, emails, and text messages every day from people just like yourself looking to make a move to the Queen City. If that's you, whether it's in 9 days or 90 days, give us a call, reach out, send us that text message. My team and I would love to help. So let's get into it. Have you ever actually driven through North Carolina? So when people think about moving to North Carolina, they tend to be focusing on the areas such as North Carolina or Raleigh, or there are some other growing areas such as like Cary or High Point. But if you drive even from Charlotte to Raleigh, which is only like a 2.5 hour drive, if you drive anywhere in the city, you might be a little surprised to find that it's a pretty rural state in sense. So North Carolina is still a relatively agricultural state. So agriculture really drives our state here. And a lot of people are surprised to find that out, that when you do long drives, or even if you do like a quick 1.5 hour drive, or even just outside of the city, it does tend to feel a little rural. You see really green, you see a lot of landscaping. So that's something that does surprise people. I know that's actually one of my favorite things about living here in Charlotte or in North Carolina is there are so many day trips that you can take that kind of get you out of the city. So here in Charlotte, you can make it over to Raleigh in just about 2.5 hours. But in between that, you're going to pass a ton of small towns. They're gonna kind of feel like mountain towns. They might have like a little downtown strip or something. But in general, Charlotte and Raleigh are your two big cities. Other than that, it kind of feels a little rural out here. So a lot of people are surprised to find that. It actually is one of my favorite things about it, that you can very easily be removed from the city here. But if you're used to somewhere like Florida, like driving from, I could go drive for 2 hours and it was like kind of city after city. Might not be huge city, but it still felt very commercialized or industrialized. So it still felt pretty built up, where North Carolina in general still feels pretty rural. So that's an overall vibe of North Carolina that people are a little surprised about, but let's get into a little bit more of like the houses and buying a house here. So a couple things that really surprise people, especially if you're coming from somewhere like Florida: no gated communities. I don't want to say no gated communities. That is a stretch. We do have a handful of them. Honestly, standing here right now, I couldn't even think of a handful of gated communities off the top of my head. So when I say handful, that could even be a lie. But in general, North Carolina does not have a lot of gated communities. And that was a surprise to me coming from Florida. We have a lot of gated communities. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're a luxury community. It was just a common thing to have a gate or a one main entrance point to a community. So not a lot of gated communities here. And in those communities, in a lot of these communities, you'll notice there's not a lot of sidewalks. I know that's a really weird thing to say, but you'll notice as you drive around, even in higher end communities, I mean, I've shown clients, you know, upper $1 million houses, $1.5 million houses, and you'd expect to have a sidewalk on that street. And you just don't. You don't have sidewalks in a lot of these communities. I know here in my neighborhood, we are an older community. Our houses here were built in the 50s, and there's only a sidewalk on one side of one of the main streets that run through the neighborhood. Other than that, there are no sidewalks here. So if you're coming from a place where there's a lot of new construction, or if it's really common for you to have sidewalks, that's also kind of a shocker for people, especially if you have a family. A lot of people that move down here kind of are interested in like, well, where do you guys walk? In general, I feel pretty safe not having sidewalks, but it is kind of a weird thing that we don't have a lot of sidewalks in our communities here. So you've got no gated communities, not a lot of sidewalks, and this is a big one, especially if you're coming from up north. We don't have a lot of basements. We do not have a lot of basements. You can find them. You can absolutely find them. They do exist here in the Carolinas, but not a ton. If you go from Charlotte over to the coast, really they are few and far. Now if you head towards the mountains a little bit, like towards Asheville, towards Hendersonville, you'll notice that you're gonna find a little bit more, they're gonna be a little bit more common. but it's nothing like compared to being up north where almost every house that you pass has a basement. So our ground here, our soil, we have like really heavy clay here. And I will tell you what, word to the wise on the clay thing, it is red clay and it will get everywhere. That's something that was so annoying to me when I purchased a home, is just looking around and all the clay everywhere on it. So anyways, I divert. We don't have basements here. They are few and far. There are, developers right now are having to pick land that isn't so flat. So in order to make the neighborhood work as a community, sometimes they are having to build certain lots up. So there might be like a partial basement somewhere. It might not be a walkout basement, but as a whole, not a lot of basements here in Charlotte. We do have what we call bonus rooms. I know in Florida, it was like a second living room. We called it a Florida room. Here, it's really common. We have a lot of 2-story homes here in Charlotte. We don't have to worry about like hurricanes or something coming through and knocking them down. But we have like over the garage as a main part of your main heated living square foot. We have a lot of bonus rooms. It's just like an extra larger room. Sometimes they'll have closets. Sometimes they'll have a little closet. Sometimes they'll have access to your attic. But as opposed to a basement, we have bonus rooms in some of the houses. So another difference for people, especially if you are coming from up north. Now, if you are coming from down south, this one might shock you. Charlotte has a ton of mosquitoes, and at least here in Mecklenburg County, there is no citywide or county-wide pest control or mosquito control. I know in Florida where I was from, you would hear the trucks drive around and the state or the city or county, depending on where you were at, handled the mosquito control. Here, they have no mosquito control and the mosquitoes are terrible. I would almost beg to differ, unless if you're living literally on a swamp, that they're actually a little bit heavier here, especially in the summertime. And for that reason, screened-in porches are pretty common here. Now, they don't come with a property most of the time. I know a lot of people kind of reference things as patio homes or are used to having an all seasons room where it's an outdoor space that might be screened in. People end up getting their porches screened in here, but it is not a common thing to come with a property. So be on the lookout for mosquitoes, wear your mosquito repellent, and if you have a porch, you might want to get it screened in. Another thing that was unique here that was just kind of weird for me to see was unfinished garages. Yes, a lot of homes here have garages. If you go into the newer homes, people don't really use them a lot. I will be honest with you. Most of the older homes here in Charlotte, so Charlotte was kind of built up and established home-wise back in the 50s and 60s is where the majority of our homes came from. A lot of those homes will not have garages, but if they do, they're unfinished, meaning you can see the studs in between the wall. There's not a lot of times is there drywall over them. That was something really different for me, and it does kind of throw off a lot of people that are moving here to Charlotte. So an unfinished garage is really, really normal here in Charlotte. So we are gonna move on to HOA fees, kind of keeping with the neighborhood theme. Most neighborhoods here in Charlotte do have an HOA fee. It might be really, really low. It might be $20 a year. It might be voluntary, or it can go up to $250 a month, or even some a little bit higher if you're in a condo or something. On average, it's gonna be relatively low here. You're gonna probably look at about under $150 a month in most Charlotte neighborhoods. This all depends on the amenities that you have and what they cover and what they offer. But if you're coming from somewhere like Long Island, or I had a family move in from Iowa recently that they were super unfamiliar with the HOA fees. So if you are from an area that's even more rural than Charlotte, I should say, you might not be familiar with HOA fees. And a lot of people come here saying, I don't want to have an HOA fee. They're not all that bad. They're not the type of HOA fee that will be really, really strict on what you can do with your property. There are certain neighborhoods in here that are going to be a little bit more strict than others. But in general, it's just kind of saying your neighbor can't park a boat in their driveway. So if you're not familiar with HOA fees, most of the communities here in Charlotte will have some sort of an HOA fee. What else is a surprise here? I know there was more. Oh, the process of purchasing a home here in Charlotte. We are in as-is state. So here in Charlotte, when you're purchasing a property, we have something that was called a due diligence deposit. We are one of the only few states that have this, and it does come as a shocker to a lot of people when they are purchasing a home in Charlotte. What does that mean? Due diligence is essentially a negotiated term between you and the sellers. It is an amount of money that you pay directly to the seller in effort for them to take their home off of the market, and you to have the right to inspect the home and to gain all information about the home that you find necessary to move forward with purchasing the property. Sounds like a great thing in theory, right? Some people like it, some people hate it. The difference is if you decide to change your mind on that property, the seller keeps your due diligence deposit. So it is a non-refundable deposit that allows you to access and inspect the home in order to gain any information, to find out any information about the home that you would like to feel comfortable moving forward with the purchase. While homes here are sold as is, that is not to say that negotiations don't happen once you're under contract and once you do your inspection period. Negotiations happen. The seller has a house to sell. They know that the house isn't perfect. So 9 times out of 10, there are negotiations between a buyer and seller, but due diligence is something that a lot of states don't have and that a lot of people are very uncomfortable with when they come here. If due diligence kind of scares you away from purchasing a home, I really urge you to consider going new construction, as they will have your standard builder deposit or something that you're a bit more comfortable with, not a due diligence deposit. So we also do not have title companies here. Our transactions are done by attorneys. That is a common question I get asked by a buyer looking to purchase a home here is, how much does a title work cost? How much does title insurance cost? All these different things related to title. We are an attorney state here in Charlotte, so the attorneys will work with the title companies. Oftentimes you won't even see the title name throughout the transaction at all. As agents, we do not communicate with the title companies. It is all done through an attorney. So, a lot of times people think that it's gonna cost you more. In the knowledge that I have, based on what I've been told from other people that have purchased homes in other states, is that working with a title company is actually more expensive. Your average attorney fee here is going to be around that $1,000 to $1,400, depending on the attorney, and that does include the title fee. You can see my cat back there. She's just kind of gazing in the sun because it's a beautiful day here in Charlotte. And another thing here in Charlotte or in North Carolina in general, generally speaking, you're not gonna find a deal here. We are constantly rated as one of the top states to move to in the country. So a lot of people that come from less desirable states will think that they can come here and that they can find a good deal on the market. I'll be honest with you, and this is a really general speaking. Now there are fixer-uppers here and stuff, you know, there are outliers in every situation, but in general, North Carolina is a growing state. It is a desirable state, depending on the area especially, but oftentimes you're not gonna find a deal. So if you are looking to move here to Charlotte or in the North Carolina area, make sure you reach out to an agent and just understand what that local market looks like. I know our market here in Charlotte is really, really hyper local. It changes from neighborhood to neighborhood, it seems. So if you're looking at making a move to North Carolina, I hope you found this video helpful. These are just a handful of things that I've heard from my clients that has kind of surprised them or been a little bit of a shocker to them. So hopefully this video helped you get a little more acclimated with what North Carolina looks like. If you have any questions or if you're thinking about moving to Charlotte or the surrounding areas, reach out to my team and I. We'd love to help you make that move.